Welcome to the NJIT website and math podcast. My name is Vanessa, and today I'll be covering factor by grouping. Factor by grouping is one form of factorization that can serve to factor two types of situations. The first type of situation I'm going to go over is when you're dealing with a quadratic trinomial. What I mean by the quadratic trinomial is that the highest power is 2, and there are 3 terms. So an example of this would be 6x squared plus 17x plus 7. See, the highest power is 2, and there are 3 terms. So how would you use factor by grouping? It's kind of the same mentality as factor by inspection, except it's kind of taking it one extra step. So as you recall from factor by inspection, you need to think of 2 numbers that multiply to be the third term and add up to be the second term. And it's almost the same thing except one extra step. You need to think of 2 numbers that don't necessarily multiply to be the third term, but they need to multiply to be the product of the first and third term. So in this case, these 2 numbers need to multiply to be the product of 6 times 7, which is 42. And the second part is the same. They still need to add up to be the second term in this case, which is positive 17. So now you want to take the chance to think of 2 numbers that multiply to be positive 42 and add up to be 17. Okay? If you were able to think of that, the 2 numbers would be 14 and 3. So then, now the next step is you want to take those 2 terms and replace the middle term with those 2 terms. So you would want 6x squared, and then the 2 numbers you just thought of, but then replace them for the second term by making one a 3x and then a 14x. See, the sum is just 17x, which is what your middle term is. So you're just replacing it with an expression, and then the plus 7. Then from here, you're gonna split it right down the middle. Okay. Then from here, you're gonna take each expression and factor out what you can. In the first expression, you should be able to factor out a 3x, and then what's left over, 2x plus 1. And then do the same thing in the second one. You should be able to factor out a positive 7. And then what do you have left? 2x plus 1. Then from here, there's just one more step. The key is when you're doing the factoring out is that you want whatever ends up in the parentheses to be the same on both sides. In this case, that's true. We have a 2x plus 1. So that actually ends up being one of your expressions in your final answer. And then in the other parentheses, all you have to put in is the leftovers. In this case, it's the 3x and the plus 7. So 3x plus 7. And then there's your final answer. 3x plus 7 times 2x plus 1. We'll do one more example dealing with a quadratic trinomial. This time we'll have 4x squared plus, minus, this time, 8x minus 5. Okay? And as you can also recall from factoring by inspection, minus and plus do make a big difference in what your numbers are going to end up being. And that's no exception in this case either. So in this case, you want 2 numbers that multiply to be the product of 4 times minus 5, which is in this case minus 20. And the 2 numbers also have to add up to be minus 8. So what are 2 numbers that multiply to be minus 20 and add up to be minus 8? That would be a minus 10 and positive 2. So again, you're just going to take those 2 terms and replace the sum for the second term. So that would give you a 4x squared. And then that would be a positive 2x minus the 10x minus 5. Notice that I could have switched it. I could have done 10x plus the 2x, but when you're replacing it with for the middle term, you want to replace it in a way that you're linking together numbers that have common factors. Like that's why on purpose I put the 2x first, because it goes with the 4, and the 10 with the 5. That way when you split it, numbers with common factors are already next to each other. But if you don't do that in the beginning, you can always go back and fix it. So now we're just going to again split it and factor out. So in the first portion, we're going to factor out a 2x. So you should have a 2x plus 1. And then the same thing in the second part. I'm going to factor out, in this case, a minus 5, because you do have the minus in common on both terms. And then what do you have left? A 2x plus 1. And again, we have that same common expression on both sides, 2x plus 1. If I had done it the other way, where I had put in here minus 10x plus 2, and I had switched those two middle terms, I wouldn't have gotten 2x plus 1 in the next step. Realizing that the two parentheses wouldn't have been the same, I would have gone back, erased it, and switched the two middle terms. And that's something that you can do, but with time, you'll realize that you can easily spot the order in which those two terms need to go together. So anyway, going back to this step here, now you already know that one of your terms is 2x plus 1. And then the other side just simply is your leftovers, in this case being 2x and minus 5. So your final answer here is going to be 2x minus 5 times 2x plus 1. And that would be your answer for the quadratic trinomial. So the next situation that you can use factor by grouping is when your highest term is anything aside from, it can be anything aside from 2, and when you have specifically 4 terms in the polynomial. So when it's higher than 2, or actually it can also even be 2, but it's not likely, but it's when higher than 2 and when you have specifically 4 terms. So for example, x cubed plus 2x squared plus 3x plus 6. Here we have the highest term is 3, which is greater than 2, and we have specifically 4 terms. It's pretty much the same thing that we did in the previous examples with quadratics, except pretty much half the work, because you're already at 4 terms, so all you have to do is split it. And then after that, it's the same exact process. You want to factor out, so the first part we're going to factor out a 2x, no, just the x squared. And what do you have left over? X plus 2. And same thing on the other side. You want to factor out a 3. And then here you simply have x plus 2 left over. When you have the common expression on both sides, that ends up being one of your final expressions, x plus 2, and then you take the little, what I like to call leftovers, and you put those together. X squared plus 3. And there you go, you're all done. So I'll do one more example just like that. Say you had 6x cubed minus 3x squared minus 4x plus 2. Again, split it right down the middle and factor out. First portion, you're going to factor out 3x squared, and you have a 2x minus 1 left over. Other side, you have, you're going to factor out a minus 2, because that gives you 2x minus 1. The reason I did a minus 2 instead of a positive 2 factoring out is because I know I wanted to get a positive 2x as my first term, and because the term here was minus 4x, I needed to get 2x here. In order to get a 2x here, I need to have a minus 2 on the outside. So, as you do more problems like this, you'll pick up more of these little tricks and trades that will allow you to do the problems much faster. So we have a common 2x plus 1, 2x minus 1, and then our leftovers comprised of 3x squared minus 2, which is our final answer. So thank you for visiting the NJIT website. If you need any further assistance, please feel free to stop by the CAPE, or the Center for Academic and Professional Enrichment, located in Kupfrian Hall 200. Good luck in your studies.